Hello everyone, my name is Amy Silvestri and I'll be your host today. Welcome to XCMeducate Busy Season Series Key Functions for Busy Season. During this session, Michelle Ake, Senior Customer Service Specialist, will walk you through how to set up and manage extensions along with showing you the right due date reports to run to ensure no deadline or deliverable is missed. The webinar will then open up for Q&A. Before I hand it over to Michelle, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this webinar. Wolters Kluwer is registered with NASBA as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE sponsors. As such, we're excited to offer 1 CPE credit for today's webinar. A total of 3 polling questions will be conducted throughout the presentation, and you will need to participate in all of the polling questions in order to receive CPE credit. Your CPE certificate will be sent to you to the email you used to register for the webinar within 72 hours after the session. If you do not receive your certificate within 72 hours, please email us at xcmclientservices@xcmsolutions.com. Please note, CPE is not available when viewing the on-demand version of this webinar. If you experience difficulty answering the polling questions, please type your answers in the question pane of the control panel, and we will ensure you receive credit for those questions. You will also have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the question pane of the control panel. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session. If we do not get to your question during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. The session is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be sent out 24 hours after the session. A copy of the slide deck is available in the handout section of the control pane for your reference. The recording and PowerPoint will also be available in the XCM Help Center at the end of this week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michelle Ake.
Thanks, Amy. Welcome everyone today. We have a really large group on the line, which is awesome. I want to quickly go through our agenda today. As Amy mentioned, we're going to talk about the extension process, from everything from user rights to searching, moving, and filling in those extensions. Then we'll talk about some due date reporting and some key gotchas and best ways to run those due dates reports. Then we're going to take a look at using the advanced search. It's really, more than just searching tasks. So I want to show you some tips and tricks there. When we go through the extension process, and I'm showing you these slides, we're going to show all of this slide in the site, but these slides are good for reference later to remind you of the types of user rights, how you have the ability to update and create your own workflows and statuses. You also can refer back to this slide, just for these bits and pieces that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about, what you should do prior to creating extensions, how do you create and move extensions, and talk about the different designations of the extension columns. When we look at due date reporting, we're going to look at the 4 different due date reports we have available. We'll also look at the difference between those and the extension report, and then we'll talk about some due date reporting in the advanced search as well. And then in the advanced search, I'm going to show you how to set different default search dates, customize the result grid, search for tasks, active and inactive for clients and users, review someone else's My View page right from the search screen, using the more filter options, and letting you know how to save those searches so that other people or yourself can use them later. So with that, I am going to go ahead and jump right into the live site. And we're going to start with the extension process. As I mentioned, extensions do require some user rights. There are 2 different user rights for extension that I'd like to talk about today. And those are create extension and manage extension. Now, the difference between the 2 is the create extension, which is located here in the task rights area, and that's right here, the second one here. That is to give the ability for anyone to just create an extension. It's as simple as that. You can click on it, create an extension, and then you would be able to update it as a general user. The other utility user right is the other user right in this utility is the manage extension. Now this one is a little different, and you want to be very careful about how you're using this one. This actually gives the user the ability to update, add the extension file date, and extend due dates. Similar to the managed shipping user right, this really should just be given to your power users and the people who are actually responsible for sending the extension to the filing authorities or to the client, receiving the approved extension, and updating the extension process so that the due dates move from the original due date to the extended due date. So you want to just be very careful about that on who you're giving those user rights to. So that's just the general user rights around creating and managing extensions. Now the second piece, and I'd like to put up the polling question here, and I'm sorry, I probably should have put this up just a minute ago, and I apologize for that, but this is a good spot for it. So I'm going to launch a polling question. If you all wouldn't mind answering that for me, we'll give you a couple of seconds. We do have about 300 people on the line, so if everybody could just take care of that, that would be awesome. Okay, we're about 70% there, so keep it coming. All right, we're about 90% there. Please remember, if you do want CPE for this course, you do have to answer the polling question or polling questions, all three of them, and it is recorded in the system as to who answers them and who doesn't. So just remember that if you'd like to get your CPE credit. If I happen to close the polling question and you didn't have a chance to answer it, you can send a message to the questions box and we'll be sure it gets recorded for you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it. Just about everyone has responded. So this is a very good response. We have 75% of the people who say, yes, they do use workflows and statuses, but 25 of you do not. So we're going to talk about that and how that can be helpful for you. So just like you have a workflow for your general tasks, we also have a workflow and statuses for the extension process. So first, let's look at the workflow statuses. Just like the others, we do have the ability, we have default statuses prepared here, and these are preloaded by XCM, and generally when you go in, these will all be turned on for you. You can see we've started each one with an EXT, so it's very obvious when you're moving something around as to whether it's an extension status move or a task status move. So we just start all those with EXT. We've tried to pre-program the ones that we think are most logical, what most people use during the extension process. If you want to create your own, and you may want to do this if you want to be able to assign an actual person to the extension itself or the status itself. Right now, the pre-programmed ones are not assigned, which means they can be moved to someone by picking an assignment name, or they are moved without having any assignment to them. So if you need a status that you absolutely want it to be assigned to someone, you can create your own by simply clicking in the box here. I would always suggest you start with that EXT. That makes the most sense to keep in line with all the others that we have here. And then you can put the name of what your status should be. It can't be exactly like what we've got pre-programmed here, but if you'd like to do a spin-off on something like this, you absolutely can. And then the important part here is you want to make sure that this box is checked off. Assigned, moved to whom required. And that would mean when someone moves a task, an extension task, to the specific status that you've created, they will have to assign someone to them. It won't go into just a general extension view, but it can be assigned to, it has to be assigned to someone, as opposed to these that are pre-programmed, which don't necessarily have to be assigned to someone. So those are the statuses and where you can set them up. And then the workflow, again, similar to how we do workflow workflows for other task types and categories. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. We would come in here and choose the extension category. Now, what's different between the other ones and the extension one is when you're in a category, you're choosing different task types to set your workflow up against, where the extension process is being set for all extensions. It doesn't matter, you know, whether they're 1040s, 1065s, or anything like that. They are all just following the same extension process. So you set it up exactly how you would set up your regular workflows. All extensions, when they're created, start in the extension prepare status. So from there, you can see we moved it to the extension start preparation. So that's a good way to move it to a person and let them know that you're going to start, you know, they should be starting to work on it. If you have all the staffing populated in your staffing in the control sheet, and you'd like to be moved and suggest a certain person that you're moving that task to based on their role, you can populate that as well. So you can set up a nice workflow. It doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, we've got a lot of extra steps in here, you know, with the opening and clearing and reviewing of points. If you don't, it doesn't need to be that complicated if you don't want it to be, but it's a nice way to kind of keep a good flow and keep every sort of on the same page that you would be, you know, using the workflows in regular tasks. So before we actually get into looking at an extension, I would like to talk a little bit about best practices before creating an extension. When we create an extension, it works off the deliverable section. So if I were to go into a task here and go to my deliverable section, you can see right here, here's a 1041, and I have a federal filing. Now, maybe that's all I'm filing for this client. But if I am going to file in multiple jurisdictions and I'm going to have multiple deliverables, I want to have those populated in my deliverable section prior to creating the extension. I mean, it doesn't have to be right as soon as you create the task, but if you're tracking all of your different deliverables, make sure that they're added here ahead of time. So of course, you know, by adding that deliverable, you simply click in the box. From here, we can add the standard deliverables that are pre-programmed. We can also add any firm-specific deliverables that might be available. The other part that's important is if you are using such as a firm-specific deliverable or a task-specific deliverable, you'll want to make sure when you're creating those that you're actually adding an extension date. We get many support tickets that say, you know, I can't extend this deliverable, it won't let me, there's no date. And that's because it wasn't set up properly. Now, all of the standard ones that we set up from XCM that you see here in your listings will have an extension date available if there is one available from that filing authority. If not, and I'm going to show you in this task-specific deliverable window, but it looks the same here as it does if you're setting up a firm-specific deliverable. When you go into the extension section here, when you've said, okay, this is my due date, you know, 15 days of the 4th month, that is the original due date. You also have to make sure you're filling in these extension periods. If you just put in the due date and no extension, when you go to extend it, it's not going to be available for extension because there's no due date available. So that's true here if you're working off the period end date, or if you're using a fixed due date deliverable, you also would require to put in that extension date or dates that are applicable for that deliverable. So you want to make sure that kind of stuff is done up front so you don't run into any issues when you're creating your extensions. So once we do that, we are now ready to go ahead and do that creating of extensions. We want everything's up to date, our deliverables are where we want them to be, everything's the way we want it to be. Now you want to think about where you're going to create your extensions, or just know where you can. You can create them from the My View, you can create them from the search screen, and you can create them from the control sheet. So from the My View page, if you're working on a task and you need to create an extension, it's as simple as clicking next to the client name and choosing Create Extension. When I do that, it's going to open the extension shell for me, and it's going to basically suck all the information from the deliverable section right down here into my extension section. It's given me the status of extension prepare, and I'm ready to roll. Now, when we talked about those user rights earlier, this is what I was talking about. Creating extension. This is what I'm allowed to do when I create an extension. That's it. I can't put any information in the area where it says support staff. So anything under the orange columns would require the manage extension user right. Anyone who is a user, even if they can't create an extension, they can put information in the extension once it is created. Okay, so under this green bar, you're absolutely available here to update this information, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But if you create an extension, that's all you did. You click next to the client name and you hit Create Extension. From this point, if you don't need to do anything with the extension right away, you're not moving it, you're not updating it, you just needed to create it. From this point, you want to use this X right here to close that extension and make it available to work on. Do not use the close extension indicator here. What that does is actually closes out the extension and says you're not filing it. So you just want to be very careful that you're not using that. That is used at the end of the process once everything has been filed and updated and accepted from the taxing authority and the dates have been moved forward. Then at that point, you're going to close the extension. Okay, so you always just want to use this upper X anytime you're working in the extension and closing it out, except for the permanent close, which you would use this close extension feature. When I close that and refresh my page, I now see that I have a designation here in the extension column. Okay, if I hover over that, I'm going to try and make that column just a little bit wider. There we go. So in the extension column, so we have three designations in extensions. We have a blank, which means no extension has been created. IP, which means the extension has been created and is in process, thus the IP. And then we also have an extension not in process. And that happens when we hit the close extension. So when I hit that close extension and I refresh, this has now changed to an NIP, indicating to me that the extension is either done and it was closed because the dates were pushed forward, or either it was created by accident and someone closed it, or someone closed it by accident using that close extension. So when you see an NIP, if anything looks different and not quite right, if the due date doesn't seem right, but the extension is closed, that's a good indicator that maybe you should take a look at the extension and make sure it was closed properly. We'll talk about how you can clear an extension that was created and closed by accident and things like that as we walk through the updating of the extension grid. To create extensions in bulk, you can also do that from the My View page, clicking two items here, or from the search page. It works exactly the way it does on the My View page. If I want to search up some 1040 tasks for 2020 and I want to create extensions, I can very easily just pick and choose. And as soon as I do that, I have the ability to create extensions in bulk. When you create them in bulk, you'll see all the different, and this is, sorry, I picked three of the same client names, but you'll have all of the deliverables for all the different entities showing here. You can do bulk updating and things like that, which again, I'll show you in a moment. But from here, again, just closing that and refreshing will then give us an open extension. The creating part's very easy. I'm not trying to make it more complicated than it seems, so I'm going to absolutely, you know, it's very easy. That's the point I'm trying to show you. From the control sheet, again, if you've got the user right, if you open up that control sheet, we jump right down to the extension section, and you simply click on the create extension task here. And it brings all that data right down from the deliverable section, and you're good to go. So creating, very easy. Now, the good thing about extensions, especially if you're using them here in XCM, is you have the ability to maintain the control of the task, but move the extension separately. So the whole extension process is really a separate entity. So I could take this extension that I just created. It's not assigned to anyone. I have the task, Ake Daycare, for 10/41, for 12/31/20, but I want someone else to work on this extension for me. So by coming in here and clicking on Move Extension, right here, it's going to ask me what status I want to go to. So because we have a nice workflow set up, it's going to Extension Start Preparation. And I'm going to go ahead and move that. Now, I am going to move it to me so you can see where it lands when I move it to someone. But if I move that to me, and I close that window, and I refresh my view, watch up here, I have my extensions, which are 4 right now. When I refresh here, that 1040 now says it's an extension in process, and it's assigned to Michelle. And if I go into my extensions, there is what looks like the task, but it is now actually just the extension task that I have control of. If I had moved this to Amy or George or someone else in my office, I would have maintained that task in my view, and this piece would have shown up in their extensions assigned to me. So it's a great way to keep control of a task, whether you're being a manager or a supervisor or something like that, and you're having a staff member create the extension. It's very easy to move it over to them for them to do the work and do the updates. When you are in your My Extension view and you want to move an extension, you don't have to open the extension directly. Here you can actually click on the box next to it, and now you've got the choice to move extension. You have these other options like you have when you have a task, but this is purely a move extension process because I'm in the My Extension view. So it makes it very easy for you to move them in bulk. If you're working on them in bulk in your My Extension view, you're able to click on that and certainly move that extension. It comes up with the next step in the process and who it should get moved to based on the workflows and statuses you have set up. So again, when you're in the My Tasks, you have to do it from the extension module. When you're in the My Extensions, you can move the tasks very easily right here by clicking on the box next to it. So let's talk about working within the extension. So as I mentioned, the staff who is preparing the extension, and that means you're preparing it probably in your tax software, or if it's a paper, however, whatever process you use to create your extension. You're not creating it here in XCM. You're just recording the information so that when you move it for someone to actually file that extension, they know exactly how you prepared it. It's good for the person who's reviewing. It's very easy to help them see what you've done and review that work, and then be able to move it on for someone to go ahead and actually file it. So if I am the preparer, you know, I'm filling in this information. When we have things pre-populated, how was the extension prepared? What was the prep method? Did you use withholdings, zeros? You use the projection? You pick one. You can pick and click and drag. Or if I close this, I'm just going to close out for 1 second and go back in. If I want, I can actually do a bulk update. If all my deliverables are following the same information for prep method, payment method, paid amount, extension filing method, I can bulk update. Now don't get confused, this does have the date extension filed in here. If you only have create extension rights and you don't have the manage, you won't be able to click in here. I have both rights, so I'm able to click in there, but you wouldn't be able to. You'd be doing just the prep method, the filing method, payment method, and the amount and a comment if you wanted to. So if everything for all deliverables was the same, You could plug it all in here, hit apply, and it would fill the grid. Otherwise, you can work right from the grid. We do, as I said, have the click and drag. If you want to do that, it makes it very simple. You can put in your payment method. Well, we're filing with 0, so there is no payment method. If there was, you could throw a number in here if you needed to. And then the way the extension will be filed. How do you want the person who's filing that extension to file it? So if I say I want it all in paper, and I save this information. Now, if I do all of this, and I want to clean this out, maybe I didn't mean to put all that information, I can undo this. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, that's incorrect. I apologize. So as the preparer, I filled in all of this information. Now, one piece I want to explain here is the extension not filing. Many people get this confused with a piggyback fed. So a piggyback fed means that a state doesn't require you to physically file an extension because it will accept the federal, okay? Not filing the extension, people will use that extension not filing to almost indicate that they're using the piggyback fed. You don't want to do that because you want to be able to extend your due dates. So if this one's piggyback fed and I save that, you see that I still have a due date available here to extend to. If I click on not filing and I save that, immediately my due date extension is gone. And that's because what you're saying is I'm not filing this extension because I'm actually filing the deliverable, okay? So by saying not filing, you are absolutely not filing the extension. It's not being accepted from some other place or anything like that. It just means you're not filing at all because you plan on filing the deliverable. Now, if you don't plan on filing the deliverable, maybe it doesn't need to be filed this year, you should mark that at the deliverable level. Mark the deliverable as not filing. That will in turn mark the extension as not filing. So you don't have to do it twice, okay? So that's the difference between the piggyback fed, because you still want to be able to push that due date forward, and the not filing. Now, again, if I close this out and save that information, I'm still in that NIP process. Now I want to move it to someone to do the actual filing of it. I'm not going to move the status, but if I did, I could just move the extension to the person who is going to file that extension. So now I'm the person who's actually taking this information, making sure it's set up properly, checking the extension itself in my tax program or however I file my extensions. And I'm saying, okay, I'm good, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and file these extensions. So I click in the box, I choose the date that I filed. If I did it for all of them, I simply click and drag and pull it down. If I have something marked as not filing, it won't put it there because I say I'm not filing it. Automatically, it puts in my name here. If I were filing e-file, I could also put in a document number if I needed to do that and keep that as a record. By doing this, and I hit save and extend, you're going to see that the current due date is going to clear, and it's going to move the next extension date over. So once I've gotten the extension processed, filed, and I've gotten my acceptance form, well, I don't even have to get my acceptance form, but I'm going to say I've done everything, I'm ready, I filed it. So now my due dates are current. Now at this point, I could say close extension and it would move it to the NIP status. I'm done. I did my filing, I've submitted all of my extensions. If I leave it in the IP status, then I can go back and say, okay, once I got the okay and the approval, then I can come in and actually click and say extension is complete by closing the extension. And once I do that, because this was with me and I refresh, now that extension has moved off my page, it's done and it's over with, okay? So that is how you update the extension. If you have an extension that maybe you extended some pieces and you wanted to not extend other pieces, but it's in the NIP process because you did part of the extension. If you want to start that process or get that back into circulation to update another extension, I'm going to just find one right here. If you have something in NIP and you want to do some additional work on the extension, you can very easily just move that extension out of the NIP status by just selecting the proper status and the person's name and saving that. And then you'll go ahead and put that extension right back into process and people can work on it. If you update an extension by mistake, you put the wrong due dates in, or it ended up not being filed, like we just finished IC daycare, and I think it was this one right here. If you put in all this information and you say everything you filed was done, and then you find out that, oops, I didn't file that one, I filed another one, I didn't mean to do that, this is where I can clear out and undo an extension, or maybe there was a problem and I have to redo it. All I have to do is click in the boxes. This is where I use the undo dates and say yes. And then it puts everything back and it clears the extension the entire way, except the one that's not filing. So it cleared out all the information and I can start fresh again. If there is a way, if you don't want to lose, you're going to lose this information here. So you could take a quick screenshot just so you remember where all that stuff was, and you can put it back that way if you just needed the due dates cleared. But that's a good way for you to kind of clear everything out and start fresh. If you want to see where the extension has moved around in the process, you can click on the extension movement. This is just like the details in an extension, in a task. And the history shows you whether a first extension was filed or a second extension if there was one, and this will show you all the information of who created the extension for the first step and who it was extended by, and put that information in there for you, just if you want to see who updated that information if you don't believe it was you. So I do see some questions. We're going to get to everything at the end. That is the pieces on the extension process. If you're not using it, I think it's a great way to keep track of everything and to move everything, and a great way to keep up with all of your due dates. So now we're going to move into the report section. So in the report section, we have a section obviously just on due date reports. Some of the things I'm going to point out to you right now are available in all of our reports. So just kind of keep that in mind. So some of the little gotchas I'm going to show you are available in all of our reports. But I do want to focus on the some due date reports so that you can be able to monitor all of those extensions in your process and know how to use the correct report. Before I do that, I do want to post another polling question. So if you all could answer that and take a moment. Great, everybody's doing it pretty quick. Don't forget, you want CPE, got to answer the questions. So I make sure you're all paying attention. Okay, we got a pretty interesting span. We got about 36 people that use the reports. 55% of people use both, but only 9% of people use just the search. Now, I'm not suggesting that any of those are a better way to do it. I just want you to know that you can use both for an easy way to look at due dates. So I'm going to go ahead and show you all the differences. So for due date reports, we have 5. Summary, by deliverable, extension, my favorite, especially on a Monday, by deliverable distributable format, which is not easy to say, and summary distributable format. So back when I was in my accounting firm, I was responsible for beating down all those people on April 1st that still had a ton of tasks that no info in. And we don't like to see that at all. We want everything updated. So my go-to was my summary report. I like the summary report because it's just that. It's a quick and dirty look at your clients just based on their, or I use it just based on their due date. Okay, I don't care if they have 15 deliverables. I don't care if they have some that are due, some that are not. I am purely looking at a due date by month situation when I'm using this report. Couple of gotchas here, and this is applicable in many of our reports. When you come in, we always have the standard set of filters up top, okay? Some of these fields say show all, some say select, some say all. I want you to understand that there are some pre-populated information in some of these fields, and you can see that by scrolling down just a little bit, and just under the first black line, there'll be a set of filters here. And this is for most reports. These filters, the filter names here that are showing from up above down in this section mean that you can have more than one selection in those boxes up above. So even though it says show all for fiscal year here, it's actually just bringing forward your default year that has been set at your firm level of 2020. And that's the standard that comes forward when you create a deliverable, create a task. It always throws in that 2020 because that's how you have it set. So it does do your reports that way as well. When I do a due date report, I don't want to miss anything. So to me, less is more. I would rather filter out in my Excel spreadsheet than to put on too many filters here and end up not getting all the tasks that I want to see. So I always set this to select all. And you can see now it's removed the fiscal year from down here. The only other filter I put on is my month filter. So I want to look for everything that has a due date in the year 2020. And then I select my months. Am I doing a March? Anything for March? Anything for February? I can do January, February, March. It's entirely up to you what months you choose. I used to do it on a month-by-month basis. Sometimes I would make sure I go back and cover the months that happened prior. I'm going to just do a standard March due date report. So by saying, and you can see my selections don't show up here because I could have chose multiple selections, but now I'm just saying no other filters. I don't care who has it, what the staffing is, where it is, what it is. I want to see all my tasks that are out there that have a March due date. I can search by my tasks here, and if I click on that, it's going to give me any task where my name is somewhere on the routing sheet, doesn't matter what role, or I can do all tasks, which looks at all the tasks out across the board. I'm going to do an all task, and I'm going to run that report. We always get a preview pop-up here. It's not the full report. If we want to see the full report, we need to export that out to Excel. And to me, as I said, this is the way to really see all of the information, okay? So once I export that out, I want to, oh, sorry, I got to pull my, oops, hold on, pull my Excel over here. So what you're seeing here is purely at a high level, the clients that have a due date in March. And I know that it's showing me all of March, because if I were to go down here and look, I've got 15, 15, 15. Now here, I have one that has a 31st due date. So it's pulling the whole month of March. It's just not a March 15th due date or an April 15th due date. It's for the entire month. You may also see something that has 2 entries. So here we have 2 entries. Same client, same task, same period end date, same original due date. However, it's showing it twice because there is a deliverable that has a 3/15 due date and a 3/31 due date. So if it shows up twice, it's because it has two deliverables with different due dates in the month of March. So that people sometimes say, oh, I have a duplicate. It's not a duplicate. It's just telling that you have more than one deliverable due in that month, okay? So to me, that's a great report. It's quick and dirty. It just no major filtering. You just, you choose the month, you choose the year, and you're good to go. One other thing I want to point out, and this is true in many of our reports, is if you want to see what columns are going to come out of a report, and I show this in all of my report training, no matter what kind of report I'm talking about, all will show you all the columns. Default will allow you to pick and choose what columns come out of that report. So if you're running a due date report, but you don't really care about the lower level staffing maybe, or the when the info came in, or the current locations, you can turn some of these things off. So when you export it to Excel, you have less columns to deal with. So this is a nice way to kind of filter down the report before actually pushing it out to the Excel format. So as I said, it's a summary. It just gives you a list of clients that have something due in the month of March. It doesn't break it all out by deliverable for you, but it just makes you know that you have to go and take a look at that particular client. Now, the due date by deliverable, similar to the summary, but it's by deliverable. It's going to give you every task that has a due date based on your filtering. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Show me the current due date. That is the 21st, 2021, and due in the month of March. No other filtering. And I'm going to run that. And what that's going to show me is all of the tasks, and it's much easier to look at it in Excel. So let me pull that up. It's going to show me all the tasks. So here's the first task, and it's got two entries because it's got two deliverables. It's got a federal and a Boston fire. Next one, again, it's got three entries because it has three deliverables. So this breaks it out by deliverable, by deliverable, by deliverable. If you want to see all that information broken out by deliverable, if you're more comfortable with it that way, then the by deliverable is the way to go. If you have a ton of clients, it's just a much bigger report. So just keep in mind what you really need it for. If you just need a quick and dirty, go with the summary. If you need to have every little detail, then the due date by deliverable is perfectly acceptable. Now we have those same reports by deliverable and the summary. We also have them in a distributable format, and I'll show you real quick with the summary. What it does is the output to Excel is different, and it's kind of nice, especially if you're that person in the firm that have to run a report for everybody else because nobody wants to go in and run their own report. You could run this report once. You could run this report once. But what it's going to do when it pushes it out to Excel, it's actually going to give a tab for every person that has a role on the routing sheet for that particular client. So by putting it out to Excel, you get a little summary page here. So all of these people have something due, have some kind of a task that they're associated with due in the month of March. And then they can work their way across their tabs to look at their own information very easily. So you could run this report once, you could save it as a report so people can go in and run it, or you can run it once, export it out to Excel, send it through email, and everyone will have access to their own tab. So it's just a quick and easy way to give the information and provide it to everyone at the firm so that they don't have to run it themselves. Same thing with the deliverable format. It's just all spread out. It's the deliverables, but then it also has all the tabs as well. So that's a good way to do that for everybody. Now, the extension report is a little bit different. And the extension report, and I'll show you clearly just through the columns that gets printed out, gives more information about the extension module itself. It shows you when the first extension was filed, when the second one was filed, if there was one. It gives you all of the information from the extension grid. So a little different than a due date report, but it does allow you to take a look if you're trying to see, you know, maybe you had a glitch in your system and maybe some extensions didn't get filed through the taxing authority. There was a problem. You can at least go into XCM and pull up and say, well, this is when I said I extended it, or this is when I updated it, and be able to kind of go back and forth and compare the information that you put in XCM against your tax software. And it just gives you a lot more information directly from that extension module. Now, the last section I want to talk about is the advanced search. Before we get there, we're going to post our last polling question. You could all take a second. Okay, getting close. Going to give it another second or two. We're close to that 100% voting. Appreciate that. Okay, so the question is, how often do you use the advanced search for more than just searching a task? So we have 42% that say often. We have 45% that say sometimes, and we have 14% that say never. They never use it for anything but searching a task. Well, I'm going to show you how you can use it for other things. Reports are great, but sometimes you just want to be able to do something quickly. And we know, like, when we run a report and save a report, the person that we might be saving it to use has to go into the report, know which report to go to, and then find the saved report. Here, we can create somewhat of a report, but we can save it and share it so that when people come into the advanced search, they can just look for it right here in the advanced search. They don't have to go digging through the reports and wonder which one it's for. So we all know how the basic searching works. You know, you come in, you type in a name, search a client, it gives you the information that you want against what tasks are out there for that client based on your default years. I explain this every time. It may be very rudimentary and everybody knows how it works, but the 3 years that you, or the, sorry, I shouldn't say 3 years, the years that you have populated in this box comes from a default setting in your system that your firm has set. Best practice, last year, this year, next year. That helps for late filers. It helps for period end dates that kind of straddle off the 12/31. Make sure you're getting all the information for all the active tasks that you have out there. You can add more, you can add less. Some people set it for just the current year, and almost every time you have to go and update that date. Whatever dates are here, also run your quick search. So when you're running a quick search, it's only looking for the client name you put there based on the years that you have here. So just keep that in mind. We all know how to search a client. I think that's pretty obvious. Keyword search is great for searching for clients' names that you might not know the whole thing or how it exactly starts. You might have something that starts with the and forgot that there's a the, and then you're not able to find it. But you do know that it has the word sailing in it. You can type the word sailing and it'll pull up anything that has sailing in the client name. So that's a good way to search keyword. Keyword is also very helpful for a client that has been made inactive but has information on past tasks that you're trying to look for. You can search for inactive tasks for clients that are in, or tasks for inactive clients by using that keyword search as well. You can also search for clients that have a specific standard deliverable or a specific task-specific deliverable or firm-specific deliverable. This came in very handy last year with all of the fires in California. all of our clients, you know, they were like, how can we know, you know, which clients file in California that might be eligible for this extended period of time? You could come right in here and search any clients that have a standard deliverable of California, and it would give you a list of all the clients you can look into to see whether they were eligible for that extended period of time due to that incredible devastation out there. You can also search by period end date. This is helpful when you're looking for just those, you know, one-offs, all your 630s. You can just, you know, clear your dates over here, type in the period end date here and here, and it will give you just your 630s or your 331s or however you want to populate that. That is also handy. We have people who have accidentally turned on their auto rollover to daily. We can all probably, you know, some of us have done it. It's easy to do and it is a mistake. But what would happen is it would roll the next things over to the next day. So if you're trying to figure out which that happened to, if you search something like a January 1 due period end date, which wouldn't really happen very often, you could find those errors very quickly. Now, if you wanted to search someone else's MyView page, you wanted to see your manager and you've got a staff member who's struggling, they say they're so busy, and you're like, oh, I don't really think they're that busy. You can take a look at their MyView page simply by coming in here, choosing the user's name, and running a search. And that shows me everything that Michelle Beamer has on her MyView page in 29 tasks. So yeah, she's pretty busy. Maybe you could help her reassign some, help her, you know, get through the struggle that she's having with her workload. So it's a nice way to be able to help someone and see what's going on. Now, if you make a user inactive, which, you know, users leave, people usually say, oh gosh, how do I know if they had any tasks assigned to them? I've already made them inactive. This little flip switch here takes you from who has tasks inactive, active user to inactive user. So then your drop down here will only be your inactive users. A quick search will let you see what is sitting on Chris's MyView page and make it able for you to move it to someone else. So that active, inactive is very helpful. Now let's get into the more filters. When we talk about using this for other things. If I want to look, I'm a manager and I want to look for all my clients who have open points. I can flip on that open points thing and do my search based on additional filters up above here. Open checklist items. Maybe you're in the audit department and you're trying to make sure that all your tasks have a start date or a restart date based on, you know, you're in the middle of the audit and you're going to have to go back to do the work. You can flip that on and look for tasks that don't have a projected start and restart date. Here's where you can do some extension due date looking. So you can look for extensions that do not have extensions, that do have extensions. If you want to look for any tasks that have extensions, you want to use only extensions. If you want to look for tasks that do not have extensions yet, you can use exclude extensions. Then you can populate the original due date. So if you want to look for all your 315 or 315 tasks that don't have extensions, you plop that 315 in here. Oops, sorry. 315 to 315, or you can do 31 to 331 if you want to look at the whole month. And then you can do a search and it'll show you all your tasks that don't have extensions. You can also come in here and look for extension status. You want to look for all your NIPs, all your extensions that are done, you can do an NIP search and an IP search. The NIP search I find helpful if you want to do that and compare it to the due dates to make sure that nothing got closed accidentally. And then you can look for current due dates. If you just want to come in and say, show me everything again with a 3/1 to 3/30, one filter here, instead of going into the reports, could give you a due date report for the month of March. The other thing we have people ask for is, how can I search for tasks that belong to a certain responsible person or a certain partner? We have these additional roles filters down here. So what you would do is you'd pick a role and you'd pick a person and you'd say done. So if I were to run this right now, and I could clear all my years if I wanted to, I could search for all the tasks that have the responsible person as Michelle Ake. I could search that and it would give me a list. Or I could say, show me all the tasks that have a responsible person, Michelle Ake, and a tax partner, Jamie Belanger. So I can do a better search looking for the people who are responsible for those roles. So instead of there being filters up here that say by partner, by this, by that, you use these lower filters here. Okay, so it's a great way to just use that filtering system more than you would use it normally. So if I wanted to run this report and I like the results I got from it, if I ran it, I could then save this report. All you have to do is name it, give it a description. Everyone can save it at a user level for you to use as yourself to go back to. If you want it at a firm level, you can, if you have the user right, you can save it at a firm level or a branch level. Firm and branch levels would be found in the saved or shared search area. My searches would be saved under the My Searches, where you can just go back in, click on the run that extension, and then if you have a multiple amount of filters, you know you're getting the same results every time. Whew, that was a lot of information. Amy, I know we have some questions here. I'm not sure if we've got a few minutes to answer them, but we can go ahead and move into the answering of questions.
Yes, we have about 2 minutes, Michelle, to get through some of these questions. So let me just reiterate to everyone on the phone, if we do not get to your question today, please look for a follow-up email. We'll email the answer to your question to the email that you submitted when you registered for this session. So, Michelle, we had a couple of questions at the beginning that were asking how to correct if error is made prematurely closing an extension.
Okay, so I think I probably went over that, but if you closed an extension by mistake, if you need to clear out the information that is in the grid, let me pull one up here that has information. If you needed to clear out everything, you simply click on the box, undo the dates, and it closes it out. It clears it out, and then what you would need to do, sorry, of course my computer's going to be slow now that we're in a time where we can't, so you have to move it out of the extension not in process. And this is where people get confused. Sometimes you can't undo things if it's in the extension not in process. And to do that, you don't even have to move it to anybody, but you just have to pick the move, pick a different status, move it to yourself if you want. And then once you do that, you can go ahead and, you can clear out those extension dates. And then you're back to the start. So that's all you need to do for that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Then we do have another question here, and I think there's some confusion on the piggyback versus the extension not filing. So this person is saying that they use it all the time and there's not a problem. But I think what you were saying is if you select extension not filing, you lose your next extension date if you use the piggyback fed, which is what we want people to do if they are actually piggybacking and using that federal extension and not a state extension. You want to use the piggyback fed to continue having that date in there.
That's correct. You might not feel like you're having a problem, but if you chose everything as not filing, you're going to lose the dates per that deliverable. I mean, your upper level federal filing might be fine, and that's showing you a good due date, so that's not a problem. But if for some reason everything were marked piggyback fed, maybe there's no federal filing for whatever reason, then the due date just falls off. So it's more about at a deliverable level where you would want to make sure that you're just using that properly.
Great. Is there a way to set default 1040 due dates to June 15th for a foreign resident? And unfortunately, Michelle, this is going to have to be our last question. So we will take the other ones and follow up after this.
Okay, so if you're trying to set something for, I believe that's the FBAR, the foreign filing, our best suggestion is if you want to carry it through in the 1040 filing, you need a firm specific deliverable and you set the due dates in the deliverable. It's not set at the 1040 level, it's set at the deliverable level. Or you create a separate task type for foreign filing and then create a firm-specific deliverable against that. If you're not sure how to do that, you can certainly reach out to support@xcmsolutions.com, and they'd be more than happy to give you the instructions on that.
Great. Okay. So with that, we are at the close of this webinar. Thank you everyone for attending. As I mentioned, we will follow up to all of the questions we were unable to get to. And as Michelle just mentioned, any questions you have, please reach out to support@xcmsolutions.com and they'll be happy to help as well. Enjoy your afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for attending.
Thank you. I hope everything was helpful.